Hi, I'm Mrs.D Math. Thanks for joining me today. We're going to go over how to add and subtract integer fractions in 7th grade math. So let's get started. So when we're adding and subtracting positive and negative fractions, we need to remember to follow the same rules that we use when we're adding integers. So let's go ahead and review those rules really quickly. So first of all, if they have the same sign, that means they're both positive or they're both negative. We're going to add the numbers together and we're going to keep the sign. If they have different signs, we want to subtract the numbers and keep the sign of the number with the larger absolute value. Again, when we're subtracting these numbers, we do want to subtract the larger number minus the smaller number. So let's go ahead and try some practice problems. So here we're going to start with a negative 3/5 plus a negative 2/3. These both have a negative for their sign, so that means we're going to follow the rule that is same sign, add and keep the sign. So we're going to add these together, which means I need to find a common denominator. In that case, it's going to be 15. So both of these have a common multiple of 15. 5 goes into 15 3 times, so 3 times 3 on top gives me an equivalent fraction. And the same thing over here, 3 goes into 15 5 times, and 5 times 2 is 10. So now I've created equivalent fractions with common denominators. I'm going to add my numerators, so that equals 19 over 15. I do know because they are both negative that my answer is going to be a negative. But I do want to make this simplest form, and since 19/15 is an improper fraction, I'm going to go ahead and divide here in order to turn it into a mixed number. I'm going to keep my negative sign, and I know 15 goes into 19 one time, and then I have a remainder of 4 out of 15. And since I can't reduce this anymore, negative 1 4/15 is my final answer. So let's go ahead and try a different problem here. Now we have a negative 2/3 plus 3/8. And in this case, I do know that one is positive and one is negative. So since they have different signs this time, I'm going to subtract the numbers. So let's go ahead and find a common denominator. So I do have 3 and 8, and my common denominator is going to be 24. And so 3 goes into 24 8 times, and 8 times 2 is 16. 8 goes into 24 3 times, and 3 times 3 is 9. I'm going to go ahead and subtract these because one's negative and one's positive. So 16 minus 9 is 7 out of 24. And now I need to go back to my sign rules. So the larger fraction, once we found a common denominator, was this negative 16/24. If I were to add here, like it says up here, I did end up subtracting the numbers because one's positive and one's negative. But I know that my larger fraction is a negative, so my answer is going to be a negative 7/24. So if the problem is a subtraction problem, you can rewrite the problem by adding the opposite and then follow your adding integer rules. So now I have 5 2/5 minus 3 1/3. So I can change this or rewrite it to be adding a negative. So I actually have 5 2/5 plus a negative 3 1/3. Again, they have different signs, so I'm going to subtract my numbers. So first let's find a common denominator. So in this case, 5 and 3 has a common denominator of 15. I'm going to have 5 and 3 as my whole numbers. Those will stay the same. Now I need to make equivalent fractions. So 5 goes into 15 3 times. So 2 times 3 is 6. And 3 goes into 15 5 times. I know 1 times 5 is 5. And I am actually going to be subtracting these numbers. So 5 minus 3 for my whole numbers would be 2. 6 minus 5 is 1 out of 15 for my common denominator. So now I have the final answer of 2 1/15. Because the 5 2/5 is larger, my answer is going to be positive. So let's try another problem here. We have 7/10 minus a negative 4 4/5. So we need to rewrite this, because if I have minus and negative, that means if I add the opposite, I end up adding these together. So now I have 7/10 plus 4 4/5. So now I can go ahead and find a common denominator. In this case, it's going to be 10. So 7/10 stays the same. 5 goes into 10 2 times, and 2 times 4 is 8. So now I have 7/10 plus 4 8/10. So my whole numbers are going to add up to 4. 7 plus 8 is 15 out of 10. Now I have this improper fraction. So I do need to change that into a mixed number, which means I'm going to have another whole number. So I'm going to add that whole number to my 4. So 10 goes into 15 one time. So I'm going to add that 1 plus 4 to become 5. And then I'm going to still subtract here. 15 minus 10. I have 5 out of 10 left. Now I can keep going and I can reduce this. So we're going to go down here and make that 5. And I know 5 out of 10 is 1/2. So my answer is now 5 1/2. I hope this video helped you review how to add and subtract fractions, and then also how to incorporate those fractions with our integer rules that we learned in 6th grade. I'm Mrs. D Math. Thanks for joining me today for Add and Subtract Integer Fractions in 7th grade math. Have a great day. Bye.